Good morning, students. Welcome to the science class. In the previous class, we finished up to terrestrial plants. I hope all of you have understood whatever we had discussed. And I hope you have learned the chapter up to terrestrial plants. You have prepared the questions. And children, if you see the presentation that I sent you, and if you read the lines of the books thoroughly, I don't think you will face any problems. If you are feeling that the answers you are not able to write down, or you are not getting the answers of the questions, that means you need to read the book again and again. You will have to read the chapter thoroughly, because most of the answers I have already given, and a few questions that I had given in the previous question paper, they are very easy to answer, even the fill in the blanks and the true false. So to prepare any chapter, you need to see the presentation thoroughly. You will have to follow it line by line, and thereafter you will have to read your book thoroughly. You were in class 4, so it is expected that you will be able to do these type of question answers by yourself without the help of your parents or tuition teachers. Have you understood, students? You need to study more and more. Now let us start today's chapter, that is aquatic plants. Aquatic means something related to water. So I hope all of you have seen different types of plants that are growing in the ponds or lakes in your area. Plants that grow in water are called hydrophytes or aquatic plants. So what is hydrophyte? All the plants that are growing in the water are called hydrophytes. There are 3 types of aquatic plants that we will read in this chapter. First one is floating plants, plants that are floating on the surface of the water, then fixed plants, and then at the end underwater plants. So basically there are 3 types of plants that can be seen in the water. The first one, follow page number 7 everybody. The first one, floating plants. These plants float freely in water. They just float on the surface of the water. These plants can float with the flow of water as they do not have roots. Very important thing, floating plants do not have roots. Now the easy examples of floating plants are water hyacinth and water lettuce. Now floating plants, now the question is, how do they float if they don't have roots? How do they float on the surface of the water? The answer is that they have spongy bodies, and that is filled with air. Their bodies are filled with air. This makes them light, and that ultimately helps them to float on the water. Now there is another example of a floating plant, that is duckweed. Okay, you see the picture of water lettuce in your book. Their floating leaves have chlorophyll on the top of the surface. Which one? Duckweed. Duckweed, one important example of floating plant. Their floating leaves, they have chlorophyll on the top of the surface. So that's all about floating plants. Let us move to the next one. What is the next one? I have already told you. That is fixed plants. Easy examples. We have all seen that lotus and water lily. I'm sure all of you have seen lotus and water lily in your areas, in the ponds or in the lakes, right? These plants have roots that are fixed to the mud at the bottom of the ponds. If you go directly at the bottom of the ponds, what you will get? You will get mud. And these type of plants, they have roots which are fixed to the bottom of the ponds. They have adapted so that they can float, get enough air and sunlight to make food and prevent damage by flowing water. So why they have adapted these things? Because it will help them to float, it will help them to get enough water, air, it will help them to get enough sunlight, and that will ultimately help them to make food and prevent damage. Lotus and water lily are important examples of fixed aquatic plants. Now, like other plants, fixed aquatic plants have some specific characteristics for adaptations. I hope all of you remember, like when we discussed the terrestrial plants, there are some fixed characteristics we discussed, right? which help them, the plants, to ultimately adapt the environment where they are living. In the same way, aquatic plants also have some adaptation features. Fixed aquatic plants have long and hollow stems with large air spaces. This helps the plants to stay afloat. This helps them to stay floating on the water. Their soft and flexible stems bend with the flow of water. This prevents them from getting damaged by strong water currents. Very important thing. How does it help them? It helps them from getting damaged by strong water currents. Let us move to the next page. Page number 8. Here also you are getting some of the important features. That is their flat and broad leaves and their waxy coating on the leaves, which helps them from, prevents them not to getting rotten. Unlike most green plants, fixed aquatic plants have stomata present on the upper surface of the leaves. Okay, this is very important thing. Unlike other green plants, these fixed aquatic plants, they have the stomata on the upper surface of the leaves. Okay, and it helps them to breathe. Right? So that's all about fixed plants. Let us move to the third point, that is underwater plants. Some plants remain completely beneath the surface of the water. They are living on below the surface of the water level. They are called submerged plants. They are called submerged plants. They have adapted to breathe underwater. They have the facility, they have the features so that they can breathe under the water level. Right? Examples are hydrilla and tape grass. Their roots fix them to the bottom of the pond. If you see the picture of hydrilla, you can see that their roots are fixed at the bottom of the pond. They have thin, flexible stems, finely dissected leaves, and ultimately it helps them to resist the water currents because they're living inside the water, not on the surface, but inside the water. Hydrilla has tiny leaves, while tape grass has narrow ribbon-like leaves which bend in the flowing water. So that's all about this chapter. Let us go through the chapter thoroughly and follow this presentation. I hope you will be able to understand everything.